Good morning everyone. Today's our topic is research design in research methodology. Today we will discuss about understanding research design, qualitative and quantitative research, primary and secondary data collection methods, surveys, observations and experimentations under this research design. If we see sources of secondary data, so there are two major sources of secondary data. One is internal and another is external. In internal sources of data, a company can collect the data from its history, company background, market share, competitors information, and this type of internal information can be maintained by a marketing department, sales department, a corporate cell and marketing intelligence within the company. When we look at the external sources of secondary data, external sources includes syndicated reports such as retail sales data or market share data and industry analysis. Some of this information may be available through different sources such as business newspaper, magazines, industry association or trade bodies. Prominent sources for secondary data are CMIE, that is Center for Monitoring Indian Economy Monthly, the Hindu daily newspaper annual survey of Indian industry, syndicated research studies such as the NRS National Readership Survey or IRS, that is Indian Readership Survey. So these are some prominent sources for secondary data. Let us discuss about the creating a mechanism for gathering secondary data. That most useful way to gather relevant secondary data on a given industry is to have a cell within the organization to monitor and keep cuttings from business magazines such as advertising and marketing, business media, business today and business world. Now this can be supplemented by newspaper reports from Economic Times, Business Line or other business dailies. Over a period of few years, these methods ensure that we can easily look back and get a perspective on our brands, industry and competitors. And this secondary data also creates reference material for new employees or trainees who are hired to do their internship or summer projects in the company. It is now possible to keep electronic clippings from website of many of these newspaper and magazines. The marketing research agency can also use this gathered material as a background information and quickly launch into designing and conducting the primary research based on what is already known. Let us look at the disadvantages of secondary data, that it may be outdated. We may have cuttings which are 2 years old about consumer preferences and these may have changed over time. Another disadvantage is it may be done for a different purpose and therefore be slanted or biased, and it is important to note who has collected the data and for what purpose before making any judgment on its usefulness. The sample or the methodology may be different from or unrepresentative of the target population that we are studying. For example, the earlier study may studied only teenagers, whereas we are looking at all adults and teenagers. The unit of data aggregation may be different from what we need. For example, we may want to know reactions from different sexes, that is male or female separately, and these may not be reported separately, or only region wise data may be reported. So not center wise or city wise, or the way income groups are formed may be different from what we want to study. Let us look at the advantages of secondary data. That first advantage is it's better prepared primary researchers. It serves as a cross-check for other secondary data. It provokes thinking about methodology and its impact on result of research. It is much less expensive than primary research. In the age of the internet, it is worthwhile to at least download and look at what is already available on the product and industry before venturing into the field for doing marketing research. Let us look at the exploratory research. It is one type of the research methodology. It does not directly lead to marketing decision being made. It may be undertaken for knowing a little more about the problem or the consumer or the way questions should be formulated. Which factors should be included in the study or in general to help design a follow-up, that is conclusive research study. As the name indicates, a study which seeks to explore any of these subjects is called an exploratory study. Another form of doing research is conclusive research. In conclusive research does lead to major marketing decision being taken. As the name indicates, it seeks to draw conclusions about effects of marketing or consumer variables on other variables like sales or consumer preferences. This is usually done through a proper research methodology, rigorously designed sampling plans and field work, and appropriate analytical techniques. Conclusive research may follow exploratory research in cases where the area of investigation is new. It is more likely to use statistical tests, advanced analytical techniques, and larger sample size compared with exploratory research. Conclusive research is also more likely to use quantitative rather than the qualitative techniques. Major qualitative research techniques are used for various purposes by marketing researcher. We will look at three of them in some detail. These are depth interview, focus group, and projective techniques. When we talk about depth interview, it is unstructured and longish interview on the given subject. Most questions are open-ended, so in this a researcher tries to ask for opinions, anecdotes, feelings about product, service or occasion of use, and so on. The discussion is rich in personal detail which is individualistic. Compared to a regular structured interview, a depth interview has only minimal instruction for the interviewer and the respondent is free to respond in any way he likes and not constrained to a set of multiple responses or predetermined categories. But it could also be more difficult for the same reason for both the interviewer and the interviewee. In depth interview, the expectation of the research respondent from a regular survey is easy to answer, non-intrusive questions which do not probe too far. It is different with depth interviews. Every selected respondent may not feel comfortable being open with a stranger interviewing him, and his may hinder the process. The interviewer also must have the required training to make a focused but unstructured conversation period as long as an hour or more. An example of a depth interview would be to try and probe the feelings of a car owner about his car, like what it means to him, how he feels when he is driving it, who generally he takes out with him or who else he allows to drive it, how he perceives other people who drive the same brand and other brands or model, why he would or would not consider other brands, etc. are the example of questions that can be asked in depth interview. Let us look at another category, that is focus group, a group discussion on a given subject conducted by a trained moderator. The purpose of this is to create a less than formal situation where people can exchange their views, bringing out their opinions, attitudes, feelings about the given product. To bring out a fruitful discussion, the subject has to be carefully thought out and moderated if it veers away from the given subject. The participants have to be called to the venue, and a system of video or audio recording should be used to record the discussion for later analysis. The moderator and the analyzer of the focus group can be a different persons. The sample for focus group is selected as usual from a target population which is specified by the needs of the study. Usually a group consists of about 6 to 10 members. The length of the discussion can be about an hour and a half or until the group has nothing left to add. This technique is used frequently to check out opinions about new concepts before a product is launched. In general, as an exploratory research tool, it is sometimes also used for conclusive research or in combination with a survey as a cross-check for the important findings from the survey. For an example, it shows a focus group interview that here is a topic, that is घर में माँ बहन नहीं है क्या, and Mr. Rohit Sardana, for an example, is a moderator of this focus group discussion, and the rest of the three are the participants who are giving their opinions about the subject talked about. Let us move on a new technique, that is a projective technique of exploratory research. There are many different techniques which can be called projective. One popular method is to show a respondent a picture and ask him to describe the persons or object in the picture. A particular product or brand can be shown being used or displayed, and the respondent can be asked to guess the type of consumer who would use the product shown. For an example, here we can show a picture of a car, that is Rolls-Royce. We can project this to the respondent and we can ask the question regarding the customer segment or the market share or what kind of the customer would be using this car. This is essentially a technique which seeks to get indirectly at the underlying motives or attitudes or emotions of the respondent, which he would not reveal under direct questioning. This method of questioning overcomes some common inhibitions of respondent, such as the wish to give socially desirable responses or giving answers acceptable to the interviewer. Another variation of projected techniques is to ask respondent to associate brand with one word, a person, a celebrity, an animal which they associate with the brand. Interpretation of such association is best left to a psychologist or a researcher with a psychoanalytical background and experience. Then a sentence completion. In this, another type of projective technique is to give an incomplete sentence to the respondent and asking him to complete it. For an example, people who use brand B coffee tend to be, and then it is given a blank to the completed by respondent. This method is similar to word association and may result in surprising or unexpected associations. Indirect methods such as projective techniques have proved themselves useful in many classic research situations where direct methods proved unsatisfactory. Once we decide the techniques of doing exploratory research, the next comes is validity of research. Let us assume that we changed the price of a brand of pen and its sales were affected in the following week. Now the question is, can we conclude that the price change was responsible for the change in its sales? We cannot be really sure unless we know what else remained the same and what else changed during the period. An experiment could be designed to draw a valid conclusion that price was a major cause of change in the sales. Validity of result refers to its generalizability and its robustness. So the validity of research is very much important. Is the result of an experiment occurring merely by a chance, or is it due to the intervention of some variables that we have no data on? Is it a valid relationship between the variables under study? To obtain a reasonable valid result, a researcher must be aware of all likely variables. Assume these are A, B and C affecting the variable being studied. Be able to control or keep a constant A, B, C and vary the independent variable, that is price, to find the impact on the dependent variable, that is sales. Now let us talk about another method, that is experiments. Experiments can be conducted with varying design and varying amounts of control or rigor. A laboratory experiment typically have the best control and field experiment have the least control. This is also called a simulation. That simulation done on a computer can control any variable, which may not be possible when we deal with the human beings in contrived setting in an experiment design to measure the effect of price, packaging and promotion on sales. Human or psychological factors such as the effect of brand name, ambience of the simulated store, etc. may affect human respondent participating in an experiment. That is also called as a test marketing. Test marketing is the name used for a class of controlled experiments in marketing research. Its objective is to predict sales either absolutely in terms of units or relative in terms of market share based on changes in the marketing variables, that is price, promotion and packaging, such as distribution, promotion or advertising, etc. Now disadvantages of test marketing are that, for example, a novelty of the product being tested may result in high one-time sales due to only the curiosity part. Once having tried the product, there may be no repeat of sales of the same magnitude as in the case of trial sales. Another disadvantage is that when you are test marketing, your competitor can be aware of your product design and may counter your efforts by introducing a similar product before you. For example, before Procter & Gamble could launch their concentrated detergent, that is Ariel, in the Indian market, and while they were test marketing it a few years ago, a competitor of Procter & Gamble, that is Hindustan Lever, launched their brand called Surf Ultra. There have also been allegations of an outright sabotage of test market by competitors. For example, they may buy up big quantities of your brand to give the impression of a huge success and mislead you into launching a product nationally. Stimulated test marketing. In a stimulated test marketing for FMCG products, consumers are shown product information or sometimes exposed to advertisement for the brand and then given money or coupons to buy the products, made available in simulated store containing all the major competitors' brand in the product category. In this, a non-purchaser of the sponsor's brand are given free samples, and after a use period, the users are interviewed to gauge reaction and repeat purchase intention. A few years ago, a Mahindra & Mahindra, the multi-utility vehicle manufacturer, did a stimulated marketing exercise for their new brand called Armada. Thank you.